Divorce marks the end of a marriage, but it doesn't have to mean the end of love, respect, healing, or family. So, how do you protect your children, honor one another, and move forward without allowing bitterness to define your future? Today, we're having a conversation that many people need, but few know how to have. Whether you're happily married, struggling in your relationship, divorced, or alongside someone or walking alongside someone who is, today's episode offers hope, dealing, healing, and practical wisdom. Welcome to the Stronger, Deeper Marriage Show, where we believe stronger marriages begin with real conversations. I'm Lucille Reddic, the harmony expert, helping couples create marriages filled with peace, purpose, and passion through intentional communication and my heart to heart method. And I am here with my amazing co host, Patti Hall.
Hello, everyone. I am Patti Hall, the wellness warrior. After 39 years of marriage, I know strong relationships require love, grace, communication, and the daily commitment to care for ourselves and keep growing together. I'm so excited about today's conversation because healthy relationships begin with healthy decisions. Sometimes life doesn't unfold the way we expect it, but we still have the opportunity to choose healing, wisdom, and grace in the relationships that matter the most.
Love that. Thank you, Patti.
You're
So
welcome.
today's guest is Earnest James, a TEDx speaker, podcaster, mentor, author, and passionate advocate for healing and personal transformation. Ernest has dedicated his life to helping people deal with their problems, heal from their pain, and fulfill their purpose. Through his speaking, workshops, writing, and the Deal to Heal podcasting network, he encourages people to move beyond hurt and into healing. Ernest is also the founder of the Deal to Heal School for Living, where he helps individuals develop healthier lives and healthier relationships. Drawn from his own journey, including 10 years of marriage, navigating divorce, and discovering how families can continue to love and support one another after the marriage ends. Ernest brings wisdom that is honest, compassionate, and deeply hopeful. One of his guiding beliefs is we must heal ourselves. When we heal ourselves, we heal our families. Our families heal our communities, and our communities heal our world. Ernest, welcome to the Stronger, Deeper Marriage Show.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm listening to all those things you said. I'm like, I need to know that guy. But I'm definitely, I definitely appreciate being on, being the guest. I always say I love being on this side of the mic because all I got to do is talk, and let y'all do all the other stuff. So I'm here for it.
Well, good, good. Glad to have you. And so happy for your yes. So let's begin by getting to know you a little better. Did I leave anything out? Is there something you want to share with this?
Sure. So I definitely love the intro. When I go and I talk to people and I'm having these conversations and being on different podcasts, a lot of times they talk about the things that I do or have done. But I always say at my core, I'm just a person who loves people, born and raised in the church family, learned to serve at an early age and my mom, growing up with my mom as a minister, and later on she became a pastor. But hearing her prayer as a young kid, she would always say, "Lord, give me a love for your people."
Mm.
And so growing up and hearing that, I took that as my prayer as well as I began to grow, and having a heart for people and a heart to serve, just like, Lord, give me a love for your people. And he's done that. And so in different ways, whether it's podcasting, speaking, workshops, whatever it is that I'm doing, or just volunteering, I'm always doing something to help somebody, in some way, and serving in some way. And even more recently, I had a conversation with a coach, and we were going over some things. And she said to me, "What do you want to be known as? Like, how do you want to be known in the world?" And the words that came to me is, "I want to be a sanctuary." I want to be a safe space. So wherever I come, even if I don't open my mouth, my very presence, I want to be able to bring peace into that space. And since that, I've kept that in my heart, and I've had several people, come up and talk to me, and confirm, like you do have that presence, even without me saying anything about it, but just like, oh man, it's just knowing, So I thank God for definitely for answering that prayer, because that's what I want to be. I just want to be a safe space, and I want to be able to continue to help people any way I can.
I love that. A safe space, a
Absolutely.
sanctuary.
Yeah.
Hmm. So, where did your passion for healing begin?
So I would say, like I said, growing up in the church and learning to serve at an early age, like back then we had to, what I mean? we had to, we had to go to church, but then we had to go to the different spaces. My grandmother was really big on service, and so we had to go to the nursing homes, we had to go to the hospitals,
Mhm.
we had to go to all the, rehabilitation centers, and anywhere where people were shed away, or like, sent to kind of like, okay, send them there. Those were the places that we went to. And my grandmother used to always say, there today could be your tomorrow. And if
Right.
you're in their space, you will want someone to come and check on you. You
Yeah.
will want someone to come and see about you. And so growing up in that environment, and again, just learning to have a heart for people, learning to serve, I just kind of grew into it, you know what I mean? And it never went away. And it just became part of my heart's desire. Just like, all right, how can I help? And then the healing, I would say, after some of my own experiences as an adult, depression, dealing with depression and divorce and suicide ideations and all those things, and definitely being able to be on the other side of it.
Mhm.
It's like, all right, God, how can I use this experience that I've had in order to help other people? And so that's how all this that I do now, a lot of it, that's how it started now.
Oh, I love that. It
Wow,
started
that's
with
great.
service. Yeah, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. So, every marriage begins with hope. So, before we talk about divorce, let's talk about marriage. When you got married, what dreams did you and your wife have for your future?
So I'll start with myself, right? Even before marriage. So I grew up in a two-parent household, right? So I grew up with my mom and my dad, and I grew up being able to see the wedding vows lived out in front of me, do, during some of the hard times and some of the good times that we had as a family. So in my earliest memories, we were living, I would say, like middle to high class lifestyle, right?
Mhm,
So my
mhm.
dad worked for the phone company. This was years ago, of course, but my dad worked for the phone company, so he was a lineman. So they installed the lines and wires and all that stuff. And so he had the good job. So we had the house. We had the house with the picket fence and the two-car garage. We had a camper that we would go and take, vacations in the summer. Like we had a nice lifestyle right in the heart in the city of Chicago, and we
Mhm.
were, we were doing good,
Mm.
and so my parents decided to move to another state, and they transferred my dad to the other state. So we moved out of state, and we probably was out of state for maybe like 2 or 3 years before my parents decided to come back to Chicago. However, when they decided to come back to Chicago, that's when everything changed. So for whatever reason, the job wouldn't transfer him back. So when
Mhm.
we ended up coming back, we didn't come back to a job. You know what I mean? And so a lot of things changed really quickly. And so we have a husband and a wife and 9 kids, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
Big family.
yeah. So we had my family we had our own house and cars and all that stuff. To come back to Chicago, and you got a husband and wife and 9 kids sleeping in one bedroom in your mom's house, right? So that's
Mhm.
definitely a whole transition change. And I always say during that time period, I got to see where the for richer or poor come in, right?
Mhm.
Because we definitely didn't have the same lifestyle we had before we left, when we came back. And my parents stuck it out. They stuck it out and they stayed together. And I always say my dad, thank God for him, because he had 9 kids. He had a wife and 9 kids, and I unfortunately know uh, fathers, who have had less than that and walked off and left. You know what I mean? And he didn't. He stayed there. And it took some years for them to rebuild and for us to get another house and kind of get back to where we were. But they did it. They stuck it together. And then, years later, my mom would get sick with cancer, and being able to watch how my dad took care of her, I got to see that, sickness and health part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, long story short, that was my experience, right? Two-parent household, sticking together, and all of that. And so that was the dream that I had for myself, even from a young child. Like when I decided to get married, this is what I want. I want that stick to itness. I want that stick together through better for worse and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I've been married twice,
Mm-hmm.
and what I found out after my second marriage was actually led me to a lot of the stuff that I do now. What I realized after coming out of my second marriage was that every woman I've ever dated in my life was a fatherless daughter. And so realizing that there were some
Mm-hmm.
different traits that were in each relationship as I began to grow and go through my relationships, like, oh, I didn't even notice this stuff, but then it started to show its head. And so when we started talking about my idea of marriage and then what my wife's idea of marriage, they didn't have the same example that I had, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even trying to bring that together from me being coming from a two-parent household and then them coming from a single mother household, just to try to make that work was a puzzle, And so that was some challenges even getting into that. So um, I would say my first marriage, we came in working hard. We both were young, no kids. Both had good jobs, and so we started off how my parents started off. We had the house, I had the truck, she had the car, I had a motorcycle. Like we had all the things. But then tragedy stepped in, and she ended up losing her mom, right? Through
Mm-hmm.
cancer, actually right before my mom passed. And that changed her as a person, and it changed our relationship as well. And unfortunately, we weren't able to make it through that hardship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then my second marriage, which came a couple years after that, um, was to one of my oldest friends, right? So we've known each other since kindergarten. So
Oh
we grew up
wow.
together. We went to church together.
Mm-hmm.
Our families has always known each other, to the point that she was married before and I was married. So when we got married, we both were in our second marriages. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but our families were so close that when she got married like late teens, maybe like 19, 20. She had her first child. My mother became the godmother to our first son, what ended up being our sons after we
Uh-huh.
got married. But that's how close our families were.
Mm-hmm.
So after, we kind of went our separate ways. And then after I divorced, by the time I divorced, she had been divorced. And then we came back together and decided to give it a try with a blended family. So I came in with my daughter from my previous marriage. She came in with her first 4 sons from her previous marriage, and we came together to make that work. Unfortunately, like I said, just the dynamics of coming from a two-parent household and a single mother household. Even though we've known each other our whole lives, that doesn't neglect the fact that we had different lives and
Mm-hmm.
different upbringings, and
Yeah.
different experiences in the home. And so
Mm-hmm.
there were some challenges even with that.
Mm-hmm.
We did manage to stay married for 10 years, so we did have a nice run at it, which brings us to where our discussion today. When we got to the point where we started to talk about divorce, one of the things that was very important to both of us was that we maintained our friendship and we maintained the bond as a family, because we were already family before we got married. Like our mothers were best friends, already. We grew up in church already. We already
Mm-hmm.
already had relationships with her sons before we ever got married, because we were always around each other anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it was important for us that we don't lose our friendship, even though we were losing a marriage, because we've been friends since kindergarten. we've
Oh
been
wow.
friends longer than we've been married. You know what I mean? So it was important for us not to lose that, even though we were deciding to end the marriage. And we sat down, we had some conversations, but it's been almost 6 years now, and
Mm-hmm.
we've been able to do it. We've been able to stay
Oh.
good friends with each other. We're able to stay active in the lives of our kids and our grandkids. We got two granddaughters now, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So yeah, we've been able to do it. It's funny because it's more of a challenge for people outside of us than it is for us. Like
Right.
you could share this story, it's like, what? Y'all still friends? I'm like, yeah, we've been friends longer than we was married. You know what I mean? But that is so hard for people to understand. And that's why I like having this conversation, because I'm like, just because you get divorced, you don't automatically have to become enemies. You
Mm.
know, like, you can still remain friends. And even if not friends, you can still at least remain cordial with each other. Like it
Mm.
doesn't have to be like, like we used to say back in the days, on site. It don't have to be on site. Like every time you see each other, all right, here we go. You know what I mean? Like, like why? I just turned 50. It's like, okay, I'm 50 years old. Why do I don't have to have that attitude. I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
have that thought process that just because this thing didn't work, it doesn't neglect the fact that all the other stuff did work.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've been friends before we got married. Our family structure. She's definitely been a great asset, should I say, to my daughter. My daughter's 23 now.
Mm-hmm.
She's been a great asset to my daughter. And me, even with still taking out time with my sons. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But that, I guess, it takes a mature person, I guess. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? But
Exactly.
it's possible.
It definitely takes a mature person.
Because
And it
look.
seemed like that would be challenging for people that you dated. Like another female that you may date, your relationship with her may be intimidating once because of the history that you
Mhm.
have. And then two, you were actually married. So, and you still intertwined. So, have you run into that if you're dating again? Like,
Definitely. Definitely. I've ran into it on my end, and I'll tell you, I ran into it twice. I ran into it on my end before, and I ran into it on her end, right,
okay.
with the guy that she was dating. And I'll tell you this: so she was dating, and she was dating this guy. It's after we got divorced. When we got divorced, I moved out the house, so she
Mm-hmm.
was still living in the house where we were married at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're having a birthday party for my granddaughter. So I come over, we're getting everything set up. I'm helping setting things up. And so her boyfriend at the time, he was there. We had met, so he knew where I was. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, all right, what we need to do. So we're putting stuff together, and I'm like, well, I need to go get this or whatever. So I'm going to get the things that I need. I used to live there for 10 years, so I know
You
where
know
everything
where
You
is.
know where
everything
everything
is.
Yeah,
is.
and we just, doing our thing, putting stuff together. And it was later on, after the fact, me and her having a conversation. It's just like, yeah, he felt intimidated because he was like, you was all, doing this and that or whatever. And I'm like, I mean, what you want me to do? We
Right.
had stuff to do. And mind you, he was sitting. You know what I mean? Like, so we both gonna sit and let her do
And
everything.
let her do
You know what I'm
everything.
saying?
What?
So I'm just like, bro. And I said the same thing because I had, and on my side it was a little funny, right? Because the young lady who I was dating, we were friends first, and then we had started dating, right? And so that was
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that came up from her. She was like, "Well, you can't be friends with your ex," that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And even after we broke up, we've still remained our friendship for, it's been almost 5 years since we broke up. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you proof of your own words that you can still be friends and you can still have a relationship
Mm-hmm.
outside of dating, because
Mm-hmm.
we're still friends, and we broke up 5 years ago. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, so I've seen it on both sides.
That's a good question, Patty, because I hadn't even thought of that dynamic of when
Yeah,
somebody
that's
else comes into the
Yeah,
equation.
and it's like I said, it's more harder for other people because it's not the norm.
Yeah.
And
right.
I don't even want to necessarily say it's not the norm, but it's not the norm that you hear about, because I'm
Yeah.
sure we're not the only ones. Actually,
Right.
I know for a fact, I knew one couple who they were legally still married, but they lived
Mhm.
in different houses. They had different girlfriends and boyfriends or whatever, but they still were friends and they still were legally married for
Mm-hmm.
years. And they
Mm-hmm.
knew each other. They hung out every now and then. So
Mhm.
I know we're not the only ones
No, you're not
that
the only
made
one.
it happen, but we're probably the only ones that you hear about. So
Yeah.
you usually hear about the other side of it. Oh, we can't get along, and I
Right,
don't like this
exactly,
person,
exactly,
And so, because that
exactly.
is what we often hear, it's like that's the expectation. Anytime you get divorced or someone gets divorced, the expectation is now you become enemies. Like, okay, now we're on this phase. It's like, but
Mm-hmm.
why? Why?
Yeah.
Why do you have to be?
Well, I think that it speaks to you guys' maturity, but it
Exactly.
seems like you guys mostly may have had a conversation too about that desire to remain friendly and amicable. You
Yeah,
know.
we had a lot of conversations about it, and it definitely wasn't an overnight thing. Like,
Mhm.
even like I said, when we were still married, when we got to the point where we even started talking about divorce, we started talking about that at the same time. Like,
Mhm.
okay, if we do happen to get divorced, this is important to us. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So how are we going to make this work? And so yeah, it was plenty of conversations before we even got to the actual divorce.
Mhm.
And to make it so crazy, when we went to the courthouse to get divorced, we rode together.
Now
Before
that's funny.
even going into the courthouse, the judge was
That's
like,
funny.
okay, we're like, I'm on this side, she on this side. We say what we need to say, sign papers, whatever. We're like, all right, you guys can leave. And usually, because like it was other people in front of us, they were like, okay, the woman leave out first. They make the man wait like 5 minutes or 10 minutes before he leave out. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, we rode together. You know, so we
Oh
got to leave
wow.
together. Now she's just gonna be sitting in the hallway until I come out. You know.
Oh wow, that is funny. But you know what? Your story is similar. Not the divorce part, but
Mhm.
the dynamics of it. You came from a two-parent household. My husband is from a two-parent household. Parents were married probably close to 50 years or something like that before my mother-in-law passed and everything.
Mhm.
And I was a product of divorce. My parents, which I'm adopted, so you know, the loss of my biological mother. I met her later on in life, but you know, maybe I would say I started living with them when I was about a year and a half old. So I'm sure, you
Mhm.
know, somewhere psychologically, I knew that I had was not with my biological mom at some point, but
Mhm.
grew into love my parents. And then they got
Mhm.
divorced between second and third grade, and
Okay.
I was a daddy's girl, so I really, really felt unprotected and the loss of not having my father in the home for the day to
Mhm.
day. And so, in feeling that loss of my father not being in the home and not being feeling protected when I got older in puberty and out into the world and stuff like that, I didn't want that for my children. So,
Mhm.
you know, coming from the fatherless home, you know, it
Mhm.
can affect, you know, anybody in our audience, it can affect you in a different way because the
Exactly.
way that it affected me is like, okay, I'm gonna do whatever it is I can to try to stay in this thing, even though my husband is making it difficult for me to stay here because he wouldn't. I felt like he wasn't doing what I want him to do. He's being hard headed. He not. This is not going the way I thought it was gonna go. And I mean, you know, because we had contention on a number of things. You know, how we wanted to spend money, how we wanted to.
Mhm.
Uh, a big contention for us was how to be neat about the household. Uh,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and that type of thing, because my husband, it done came up in several things. He's messy, and it get on my nerves. But we've been married for 41 years. He hasn't
Mhm.
changed. It's just
Mhm.
that I have to deal with whatever it is I'm gonna clean up. I'm gonna clean it up. Whatever I'm not gonna worry
Right,
about it. But
exactly.
Right.
it weighed
Exactly.
heavy on me early in because I expected marriage to be one thing and then it was something
Mhm.
else, and I had to grow through that. And the Lord sent some amazing women into my life to really
Exactly.
talk me off the
Off the
ledge.
ledge.
Yeah.
And then, because I was sure trying to jump off, I was like, I'm
Yeah.
sick of this. I don't want to be in this no more. This is not what I signed
Exactly.
up for. So,
Yeah.
so
And
it
there and
was.
there's a lot of things like that that shows up, right? So I'll give you one example that came up in my marriage. We kind of got into it because I have my daughter. My daughter's my only biological child, right? And so when we got married, she had the four sons, and so
Mhm.
we got married. And so again, the topic of how do you raise the kids
How do
and
you raise the kids?
discipline and all of that stuff started to come up, and even the relationship, with the kids came up. And so one of the things that came up for us was she was like, well, how I was raising the boys, right? How I was with the boys, her expectations of what that father son relationship was supposed to look like was it wasn't realistic, right?
Mhm.
Because her father wasn't in her life.
Mhm.
She didn't have any other real male role models outside of different people like in the church and stuff that we came around with. So that experience, she didn't have any experience to draw off of, right? And so
Mhm.
when I asked her, I said, well, what do you think that relationship was supposed to look like? And she's like, it was like a fairy tale. Like y'all supposed to be outside playing catch and all of that stuff. I was like, okay, there's a time for that.
But
Mm-hmm.
But
right
what's
now,
more important as a man raising young boys, what's
Mhm.
more important is being responsible, like teaching them responsibilities. Because again, coming from a single mother household, her reality was her mom did everything, and so that was her reality. She did everything. So I'll tell you one thing: when we first got together, our very first time spending the night together, right? I spent the
Mhm.
night at her house. We got up, sent the kids off to school. She started cleaning the house, right? And it was just a little small 3-bedroom apartment. But she started cleaning up, washing dishes, clothes, everything. Kids came home later on in the day. It's like, all right, we're eating, whatever, clothes, book bags, whatever, just like everywhere. And then go to bed, get up the next morning, wake the kids up, send the kids off to school, start all over again, cleaning up. I'm like, is this
Mhm.
what you do every day? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, that stops today, right?
Mhm.
So when the kids came home, I'm like, all right, we got new things. All of them was of age at that time. I'm like, all right, you're gonna learn how to use the washing machine. You're gonna learn how to wash the machine. You're gonna learn how to use the dryer. You're gonna learn
Mhm.
how to wash dishes. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
that was what I brought to it. But in
Right.
her mind, like, that's not fun. That's not you outside throwing the ball and all of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so in the midst of that conversation, we're having that conversation. She was like, well, you ain't never raised four boys. So you don't know what that
Mhm.
experience is like. And I said, you know what, you're right. I haven't raised four boys, but I
But,
know
but
someone
you're
who
a girl.
did.
But you're a man.
But you're a
Yeah,
man.
but this even more. I said I haven't raised four boys, but I know someone who did. My dad, and I'm one of the four. You know what I'm saying? So I have real life experience of
How this
what
go?
it's supposed to go. You know what I
But
mean? Like
it's
you have no experience at all. You know what I'm saying? Of what this even supposed to look
Exactly.
like.
and you're absolutely right. I know a lot of times I have two sons, and my husband and I would bump heads on discipline. I would think, "Oh, you're being too hard on them," and that was we would just that was it wasn't a lot, but it came up.
Mhm.
And one time, I think one of my sons was, I don't know, 11, maybe like 13, 12, 13. When they're
Yeah.
not your little cute little boys anymore, and you get mad because they're not picking up. But like you said, you haven't
Mhm.
taught them to pick up. And he was always very good about age appropriate. You pick up
Mhm.
after yourself. You learn how to wash clothes. You know, you learn how to wash dishes, you learn how to cut the grass, like all
Right.
that stuff he was
Yep.
always on point with. And one time we got into this big thing. I thought he was just too hard and it's too much. You're gonna send my son to therapy, da da da. He was like, he said, I don't know what you're trying to do, but I am raising a man,
Mhm.
a black man at that. And last time I checked, you ain't never been no 13-year-old boy. And of course, I got in my feelings like, don't be telling me da da da. And I thought about it. He said, I'm not saying it disrespectfully. When our daughter goes through certain things, intuitively, you already know what it is. I'm clueless. I've never been a 13-year-old boy, a girl. So I can't tell you any of that. But I've been a boy. I know how they think before they even think it.
Mm-hmm.
So when he broke things down and explained it like me, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And honestly, now we laugh at it. We just had a conversation the other day, actually, because I was telling him I have found this tablet that my son wrote when he was like, one of my sons wrote, he was like in third grade. I hate my dad. It had, he was blowing up his dad with bombs. He was like 8 years old or whatever. And I found this paper. And I remember when that happened. And I told my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, look what's going on. You're too hard on him. He's going to need therapy. I'm just doing the mom thing.
Mm-hmm.
We laughed about that the other day. Because back then he's like, I don't have to be their friends.
Right, right.
He said, women complain about there's no good men. These women are raising these no good men.
Right, right.
So, and I kind of like, we laughed at it. He said, what do you think about your sons now?
Yeah. So let me share let me share this. One of the conversations that we had, and I think this also adds to why we were able to stay friends, because we were able to have these conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the conversations that we had was that I told her, my ex-wife, and I'm like, one of the things is, one day we are raising someone's husband, right? One day they're going to have children. One day they're going to be responsible for a family. One day there's going to be somebody's daughter is going to be dependent on your son to take care of their family. And you don't want your then daughter-in-law to be bringing your son back home. Like, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that was a conversation that we had to have. And then to what you said, of course, being a stepdad to young boys, we already know at some point it's going to get to the point where
you ain't my daddy.
You ain't my daddy. You start having all that, right? And now I laugh because I always say, out of the four, my son that gave me the most problems growing up is the one that says I love you the most now.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
Sometimes you just have to, and to out of to moms, single moms, whoever. Sometimes you just got to let the man be a man, and you got to let them raise these boys into being young men. And I know it's hard sometimes, because you're like, you hard on my baby, whatever. Yeah, okay, he'll be all right.
Yes.
He'll be all right.
But to Pata's point, I have a similar story. My husband had our son taking the trash out. I want to say he was probably like 8 or 9 years old. And I'm thinking, you just being lazy. Why he too little to be taking the trash out? My son is 37. He's 39 or something like that. I'm talking about just, a thoughtful gentleman and everything.
Yes.
But I remember, thinking to myself, you know what? He is raising, because I don't think I ever said anything to him. Lots of times I'm passive aggressive. but because I don't remember the conversation, I may have said something to him about it or whatever. I probably didn't. I probably just had the internal conversation and just was mad about it. But I remember thinking to myself, you know what? My husband was the oldest of 6 boys. He knows what he's doing. Maybe he is being lazy, whatever, the Lord will use whatever he needs to do in order to. So I just had to step back and say, he's raising a boy. I've never been a boy. I'm not a man, so I don't know what it entails. Let me just sit back. But I felt some kind of way about it.
I never, like I said, I never even thought about that until my husband sat me down and he broke it down. And I was getting in my feelings when he said, last time I checked, you never been a 13-year-old boy. And it just took me somewhere else. But he was like, no, don't get upset. I'm not being disrespectful. This is life.
Yeah. And one of the things that came up, even in our relationship, right? And I had to tell her, I was like, you married me for a reason, right? So if whatever qualities that you saw in me, do you not think I'm going to put those same qualities in your sons? And so why are you fighting me from creating the same man that you admire? You know what I'm saying? To turn your sons into the person that you married. You married me for a reason, And so
Yes.
yeah, just having that conversation, and then like your husband, I'm the oldest of the four boys in my
Mm-hmm.
family. I'm the oldest boy, so it's
Okay.
like I know a little something. You know,
Yeah.
I know a little something.
And like you said, Pat, he had that conversation with you, but I had to come to the realization that he's not doing it to hurt him. He is
I
not
mean,
that, he is not that
exactly,
type of person.
exactly,
Yeah, my husband is
exactly,
not that type of person. He wouldn't do
exactly.
anything to hurt me. He don't even think that way. He is always trying to help people. And so in that
Exactly.
vein, he's not trying to hurt him. So evidently it'll be okay.
Yeah.
He can be
And
8 or 9
actually,
years old and take out the trash.
when we got married, right, and we sat down with the boys, like of course, like I said, we've always been around each other, so they already knew me, so it
Right.
wasn't like I was a stranger. But
Mhm.
when I came into the house and we sat them down, I think the oldest was 10, maybe at that time, so they still were young. But I sat them down and I talked to them, and I told them, from the beginning, two things I want you to remember, from this day going forward. Number one, I love you. And number two, I have your best interest at heart.
Mhm.
Because right now you're young. You're gonna get older. It's gonna get to the point where we start having the "you not my daddy." It's gonna get to the point where you're not gonna like what I'm telling you to do, or what, all of that. All of that is coming. I know that,
Yeah.
right? But from today on, just remember I love you and I have your best interest at heart. So when all the other trials and tribulations come, all the strenuous things that we go through in our relationship as
Mhm.
dad and sons, or stepdad, and whatever titles you
Mhm.
want to put on it, when we start getting to that point and we started having those issues, remember, I love you and I have your best interest at heart. So when the dust settles, if you
Mhm.
remember all of that, we'll be good. And years later, they all young adults, young men now, and we good.
That
So
was a
yeah.
good conversation to have. And not everybody has the words. So I applaud you for definitely having the words to have that conversation with them. But what I wrote
Absolutely.
down here for our audience, have those conversations about how to raise the kids. Don't shy
Mhm.
away from those conversations. Don't just expect that your partner looks at it the same way that you do.
Mhm.
Uh,
And I think even having a conversation of how you were raised, to before you start talking about how to raise the kids, I think you should have a conversation about how you were raised, because how you were raised, your experience is going to dictate also how you behave in your relationship and how you behave with the kids,
Right.
right? So
Right.
again,
Right.
coming from a single parent household, my wife's experience was very different from mine. You
Yeah.
know
mhm,
what I'm saying? And so just her life experience, and like I said, my wife, we've known each other since we were in kindergarten, right?
Mhm.
And we lived in the Chicago area, in the Chicagoland area, which is we still live now. But she lived on one side of the city. I lived in the south end of the city.
mhm.
Mhm.
So Chicago was a very big city. So just our dynamics and where we lived in the city, even though we were in the same city, was different.
Mhm.
Oh,
There were some challenges or some things that I had to deal with when I went to go see her that I
mhm,
didn't have to deal with when I was at my end of the city.
mhm,
And I'll just say this: back then, Chicago, and it still is to an extent, but back then, we're talking about '90s. Chicago was a very heavily, depending on where you go, heavy
Mhm.
gang culture. You know what I
mhm,
mean? And so when
Mhm.
I would go to visit her, I had to deal with them. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying?
Mhm.
When she came to visit me, she didn't have to deal with that.
right.
So just in that, even
Mhm.
though we were in the same city, we live on different sides of the city. So that experience was different. So even coming into our marriage, having those differences made a difference in how we reacted to one another. We both grew up in the church, but because of where I lived,
Mhm.
I was more I don't want to say church minded, but I was more calmed down, should I say,
Mhm. Okay.
Mhm.
because of where she lived at. Even though we were raised in church, that the streets is hard on her side,
Yeah, the
and she
reaction
got a
and
lot of
everything else
street
is different.
influence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so all
Mhm.
of that made a difference just because of our upbringing. So I would say discuss your upbringing first, and
Mhm.
then say, okay, this is how I grew up, this is how you up, this is our experiences. Now, how we're going to bring that together? What parts are we going to keep? What parts
Mhm.
are we not going to transfer to this next generation?
Mhm.
And start having those questions. hopefully you can have that conversation before you start having kids.
Yeah.
If you come into a blended family, that's different,
Mhm.
But if not, please have that conversation before you start pushing the babies out.
Well, it's the conversations that, and I'm heavy on that, on the conversations, because when I'm talking about this, every time we have this show, we're talking about having these real conversations. Yes, you and I, Pat, are having real, genuine
Conversation.
conversations here, but we're
Mhm.
promoting that for couples to have these
Those
conversations
conversations.
and
Mhm.
work through these things. Because lots of times things that aren't said, we're just expecting you to understand it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a conversation. I mentioned to you that I'm passive aggressive sometimes. I would just be, not now. But I
It's
was
okay.
expecting,
I am too.
I
I
would
am
be
too.
expecting him to already know some things. Like, I don't have to have the
Mhm.
conversation with him. He should already know that.
Yeah.
Why I don't want to go as far as to say, what some women say, he should be able to read my mind, or he should know what I'm thinking, or no, nobody knows what you're thinking. I don't have
You have
to
to
know what I'm thinking.
you have to talk
Right.
about it. You have to
You
talk about
gotta
it.
put words to it.
You gotta talk
And
about it.
part of my problem with coming up is I didn't have words to really. I came up during the generation where they said children should be seen and not heard.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
We didn't have a
Yep.
lot of conversations about the feelings. I only knew
Mhm.
two off switches: either I'm happy or I'm mad. And
Right.
sometimes frustration showed up as just mad. Uh,
Mhm.
Disappointment showed up as just mad. Whatever I was feeling showed up as just mad. So,
Mhm.
having the words and having these conversations, because my husband, he made it safe for me to have these conversations. He's not even a confrontational type guy. Now I
Mhm.
am. So whenever I would
Mhm.
have the confrontational conversations with him, because now I'm mad and I'm up to here, whereas I could have
Mhm.
conversation when I was maybe around here. Now, it's
Mhm.
evolved up to here. Now we having a conversation, and now it's not even a conversation. I'm just
It's
barking.
different.
I now
Right.
I'm just barking
Mhm.
at the thing. But he would be like, well, where did this come from? Or because he didn't have some quick words to come back to me because he needs time to process.
Mhm.
I thought he
Yeah.
didn't care. Because I'm used to a family, we sparring with words, and it's jab jab
Mhm.
jab jab,
Mhm.
and they coming
Mhm.
back and forth, and but he was like, okay, well, and I'm like, why you
Yeah.
not arguing with me?
Yeah, he sounds like he has my personality. Definitely. One of the things you talked about expectations, again, being blessed to be able to have my ex-wife still be my friend. We were able to have different conversations, and that was one of the things that came up, in us talking about what went wrong in our marriage and things of that nature. One of her things was unmet expectations. And it was
Mhm.
like, yeah, there were some things that I wanted from you that you didn't give me, but I never said it.
Never
Like
said.
she never said, "This is what I need from you." I'm like, you know me as a person, and as a husband, I definitely always wanted to make you happy, but I
Mhm.
can't make you happy if I don't even know what makes you happy or what
Mhm.
what you even think makes you happy. Like all the
Right.
things that, not, it wasn't a lot of things, but it was just some things that were
Mhm.
expectations that she wanted from me, but she never said. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, how was I ever going to be able to do
Because
that?
sometimes we assume that you should know.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, and I just think, yeah, again, having those conversations is important because, one of the things I always give her credit for, she was very supportive of
Mhm.
anything that I did. I was a minister at the time. I went from being a associate minister to helping start a church, and then I was executive pastor, and just all the things. And she was very supportive of everything that I did.
Mhm.
Because she has a heart to serve as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But what came out later was, yeah, I was helping you do all this stuff, but you never asked me what I wanted to do, which I
Mhm.
do take the blame for that because I didn't.
Mhm.
But because she showed me so much support in everything that I did,
Mhm.
I thought we were doing, what I mean, like we were doing this together. Like, yeah, but there were some things that I wanted to do. I said,
Mhm.
but you never told me either. You know what I'm saying? Like I
Mhm.
didn't ask, and I will take the blame for not asking, but
Mhm.
you never said anything either. And so now we at this point is like, oh yeah, I wanted you to do this and that or whatever. And I was like, okay, when were you going to say it? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like if we could still be married now if we had some of these conversations beforehand. You
Mm,
know, so definitely communication. As we always say, communication definitely is very important in the relationship.
absolutely. So
Wow.
that's one thing that stood out from a statement you made on the questionnaire. And so, Pata, do you remember that statement?
Yeah, you said something like you said find the things that bring your partner joy and purpose and join them in those things. Can you tell us more about
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, so a lot of times I think it's two parts, right? So I'll tell you where I am in this journey that I'm in. Maybe last year, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, but I think it was last year. I kind of went through this phase of really looking at my life and like, okay, what makes me happy? You know, like
Mhm,
really looking like what internally makes me happy. And
mhm,
so I started doing some things. I started hiking. I had never been hiking. I always was a walker, but then I
mhm,
started hiking, fell in love with hiking, you know,
mhm,
and being out in nature and things of that, things like that. And so
mhm,
that's what I do for myself. So
mhm,
now that I found what makes me happy, let's flip that on the other side of that. Let's say that was her thing, and she found, okay, this makes me happy. Okay, let me join you in that thing that makes you happy, right?
mhm.
Because now we're spending time together. Now we're already doing something you enjoy. So it's not like I'm taking you somewhere that you don't want to go, you know what I'm saying, or something like that. It's like
Okay.
let first of all, they have to find the thing. This was a whole nother thing, right? I can't make you happy. That was the thing in my first marriage. Like
Mhm.
I can't make you happy. Like you have to find your own happiness. If you're not a happy person, it doesn't matter what I do, I will never make you happy.
Mm,
Right.
Right.
And so that was one of the things that came up in my first marriage. I was just like, I'm fighting a losing battle because you don't even know what makes you happy, but you want me to make you happy. How? You know what I'm saying? So coming into after that, that was one of the lessons that I learned. Like, okay, first of all, you have to really know yourself and realize, okay, this thing makes me happy. I like to go to shows. I like craft, little
Mhm.
crafts or whatever. I like pottery or whatever it is. Oh, that's what you like? Well, let's go do that. You know, let's spend time doing that thing that you like. So
Together.
now,
Do it
yeah,
together.
together. So now we get to do something that you love and spend time with each other, which definitely you will love as well. And I'm supporting you in that thing. So all of those things begin to add up, as positives in your relationship. Like, yeah, don't just make it all about you, because sometimes that can be a problem too. If you have a passive aggressive person, which I was as
Mhm.
well, I had to
Mhm.
become more assertive. And I only learned that after my divorce, unfortunately. But even
Mhm.
to be more assertive in the things that I did, because I'd be like, okay, what you want to do? And then sometimes I had a friend of mine, we were talking about the guy she was dating, and they were going out to go somewhere, and he said, well, what do you want to do, or what do you want to eat? And she got so upset about it,
Mhm.
and she's like, I make decisions all day long. I don't want to make a decision, you just make a decision. And I told her, I said, well, you telling me, did you tell him though? Because he's thinking he's being thoughtful by
Right.
asking, what do
right.
you want to do, where you want to go, and you're taking it as, he don't care, or he just wants you to make all the decisions. I'm like, that's a conversation you need to have with him. It's good to have with
Mhm.
me. I'll let you vent all day, but when
Yeah.
you get done talking to me, you need to go have this conversation with him. But it just goes to that again, those expectations and those conversations that need to be had. It's like, yeah, just find what makes you happy, or let them help them to find what makes them happy, and then join them in that thing. And that's an easy fix. That's an easy thing to do.
Well, I know you mentioned support was important, and why is supporting your spouse's dream so important? And I've had my experiences with that, because when my husband first started his catering business, I thought I was being supportive,
Mhm.
but maybe I was doing that passive aggressive thing too, because later on, years later, he was like, you didn't support me. And I was like, what do you mean I didn't support you? He was like, you didn't support me. I know you didn't say it, but you were like, you better keep that government job. What are you talking about? You got to go out and do this.
Mhm.
We need the first and the 15th, right? We need direct deposit. You know what I'm saying? He said,
Yeah,
you didn't say any of this. You didn't have to say it. I
yeah,
felt it. I saw it in your
Mm-hmm.
actions. But I was like, but I helped you do this. He's a caterer. But I'm like, I was there for your first event and I did this. He said, absolutely. You did help. You did, but you didn't support my vision.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't
Yeah.
support. And he told me this years later, and I thought I was the best supportive person in
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
But years later, he told me that, and I felt bad about that.
Yeah.
We were
Mhm.
able to talk and work through it, but like
Mhm.
you said earlier, you know, how can we make sure that we're supporting each other's
Yeah.
dreams without compromising
Yeah.
ourselves, finding
Well,
that
I
balance?
think again, yeah, again, it goes back to the conversations, right, and having the conversation. So, I have a podcast, right, the Deal to Heal with E James podcast. I'm on 240 something episodes at this point, right.
Mhm.
I started my podcast. I don't know if I started. It had to be after I got divorced, but I started the podcast after my divorce, right? And again, my ex-wife is my friend, so we had conversations. And even now, she be like, because I do a lot of stuff, right? The podcast is one of them. But she be like, all of this stuff that you're doing, like, she didn't understand the drive.
Mhm.
She didn't understand the passion for it that I had. You know what I'm saying? And all of that. And so it was like, even as my friend, like, I want to be supportive, but I don't even understand this stuff. You know what I mean? I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand why you're doing it. You
Mhm.
talking to different people every night, and how they be like, yeah, I seen you on your little podcast. I seen, you start getting that conversation. And a lot of time it's just because there are two types of people. There are dreamers, and then there's, I don't even know what I want to call them. It's dreamers, and then people that's woke. You know what I mean? And the people that's woke just live in their reality. Like, whatever life send them, that's where they live. But then the dreamers is like, yeah, I'm here, but I have a vision for something much bigger. You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
it comes to that point in the middle where they just don't understand each other sometimes. And
Mhm.
it comes in all kinds of relationships. It comes up in friendships, and especially when you get into entrepreneurship and things of that nature. The
Mhm.
number one conversation we start having, oh, my family don't support me, my friends don't support me. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't look for them to, because they're
Mhm.
not, just because they don't understand.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we're Bible believe. I think we are Bible believing people on this
Yes, we
podcast.
are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the word says Jesus can perform miracles in his hometown because they knew him as Jesus. Little Jesus from up the street, the carpenter. Like, what are you talking about? He healing people. Man, that's just Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And that's how our family see us. Like, dude, I
Mhm.
remember when you had braces. You know what I mean? Now you're trying to be a model. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's how they see us. And so sometimes they don't learn, or should I say, they don't get on the bandwagon until later.
Hmm.
Sometimes they never do. You know
And
what I
then they
mean?
say they was the ones that really put you on.
Yeah, I was there from the beginning, and then Patty, that goes back to your conversation. I was there from the beginning. I remember when you did. Yeah, you were around. You know what I'm saying? Like, you seen me, but did you ever come to any of my events? Did you ever come to learn how to hold a camera or set up the camera from me? Did you ever come to say, "Can I edit a video?" No, you didn't. You were around though.
Mhm.
I'm one of your day ones. Yeah, you was
Right.
around on day one. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
That's it.
And so, but I think that especially when we are the dreamers, one of the
Mhm.
things that we have to be able to do is explain to our partner what the dream is, be able to tell them how they can support us, because sometimes they just don't know, right?
Mhm.
So I can be like, again, I'm a podcaster. I can be like, look, all I need you to do is come set up this camera. I'm gonna show you how to do it every Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm
Just
talking
do
to
it.
somebody, just show up and set up this camera. That's all you need to do. And sometimes just the conversation, and they
Mhm.
might not never understand why you want to talk to all these people that you don't know. Why you
Mhm.
having these conversations with all these strangers?
Right.
Let me do my thing. I just need you to set up that camera. You know what I mean? So if we
Right.
can if we can tell them what we need uh
As
for
far as.
from them to support, I
Mhm.
think most of the time we can get the support that we feel, where we feel supported.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna flip the script a little bit. In your questionnaire, you also said, learn your partner's pains and traumas and support them in those areas. So we talk about dreamers and supporting the dreams. Now let's flip it and look at that trauma and how do you support them in those areas?
So now this one is touchy, right? Because you can't help somebody that don't want to help themselves. That's
Okay.
one
That's
thing.
number one. That's number one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number one.
So they have to want the help for themselves, because a lot of times you can see the things that's wrong or the things that they need help with. Sometimes they don't see it, right? But then
Right.
sometimes they do see it, but they just like, no, I'm good with this. I remember, and I'll give this example. There was a guy. He was well off, not well off, but he had a good job. Him and his girlfriend, they bought this big house. They were just dating, so he bought the house. Actually, he bought the house. They were dating, and one day he looked around and said, "We got this big old house. Let me rent out some rooms in this house so we can start making some money." So he started renting out rooms in the house, and once he started making money, he like, "Oh, cool, let's rent out the next room." And so, but it got to the point where his girlfriend was like, you renting out all these rooms and you doing all this stuff and getting into real estate or whatever. And he asked her the question, do you want to be rich or do you want to be broke? And she said, I'm used to being broke. And he
Wow.
was like, okay, well, this is the end of this relationship. You know what I mean? But there are people that take that same mindset even with their lives. Like, I'm used to this trauma. You know what I mean? Why again, I go back to the city of Chicago. You grew up on, let's say, the west side. I grew up on the south side. There's definitely a different dynamic, but you're grown now. Why are you still living in that environment? I'm used to this environment. You know what I'm saying? So even here, I have family members that hardly ever leave the west side of Chicago, as big as Chicago is. Why? Because I'm used to this. You know what I mean? And so some people would rather stay where they're used to, even though it's dysfunction in it, because they don't have to change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was the first thing they have to be wanting to find out was, to work on whatever that issue is. And once
Okay.
they're willing to work on it, then okay, how can I support you in getting the help that you need? Do we need to go see a psychiatrist? Do we need therapy? Do we need couples therapy? Do you want me to drive you there, but you don't want me there? You just want me to sit outside in the car? Whatever. How can I
Whatever you
help
need.
you to address the things that you need help with, whatever your traumas are? And we all have them. They show up in different ways, but we all have something that we're dealing with. And when we're ready to address it and we're like, all right, I'm ready to fix this thing. Okay, cool. What we gonna do? Where we going? You need a therapist? All right, let me start looking up therapists. You know what I mean? You need whatever you need. Let me help you do that. But again, going back to, like I said, my first wife is like, I can't make you happy, and I can't heal you from the things that from the hurts that I didn't cause. Let me put it that way. I
Okay.
can heal you from the hurts that I didn't cause. And if you don't want healing, there's definitely nothing I can do. You know what I'm saying? So they have to be ready to address the changes that they need help with. And once they're ready, then you have to be ready when they're ready. Because once they
Okay.
get ready, then it's like, all right, what we doing?
Right.
Yeah, that
Right.
that is
It's
powerful.
unfortunately I had to learn all this stuff after I got divorced, right?
But now you know, and you can help others.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, I wrote down a couple of things from what you said. Uh, Having to know what makes you happy, and to people who are listening in the audience, because I felt like at one point I had lost myself. So don't lose yourself. You know, tell people how they can support, and then finally you have to want to be helped. That makes me think about the in the biblical story where the guy was by the water,
Yes,
and he said,
ma'am.
"I have no one to help me to get in the water when the water stirred." And if
Yeah,
you were the first one in, you could be healed or whatever. And I
yeah,
believe Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be healed?"
yeah.
And
And that's
sometimes
that's
we
one
have
of
to
my favorite stories. Yeah.
yeah,
And because here's the thing, like even in that story, the Bible story says that the angels came and troubled the water every year. So it's like, if
Mhm.
you missed it last year, okay, you missed it. You got
Mhm.
365 days to be ready. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Right.
you
I'm gonna
get
be right
you
there
get
by
out
the
there a
edge.
year later, and you still tomorrow. Well, ain't nobody help me. By now, you could have scooted. You know what I'm saying? No, that's how. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
it's that mindset sometimes of I need help. There's nobody to help me. I'll tell you a prime example. And I hope I don't talk too much. If I'm talking too much, y'all let me know because
No,
I,
no,
I
I'm
do this.
enjoying the conversation. Come on.
As a stepdad and also as a mentor, right? I've helped a lot of boys. We've taken in our
Mhm.
when me and my wife was married, we never had one full year where we didn't have somebody staying in our house, right?
Mhm.
Whether it was family, whether it was our son's friends, whatever, we've always had somebody. One such person I met through someone else, right? He was the only child. He lived with his mom. He didn't really know his dad. He was 21. I think he was either 20 or 21 when I met him, right? His mom had got sick. She was in hospice. So when I was introduced to him, he was homeless. He was sleeping outside, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I had the conversation with my wife. We want to help this young man. Okay, cool. We moved him into our home, gave him a room, food. I helped him get his driver's license, helped him get a job, like all the things. Helped
Uh-huh.
him go put him in school to get his GED, all of that. So we're having a conversation because he was with us. I want to say he was with us maybe like 2 or 3 years. And so once like after the first year, I'm like, okay, I'm not seeing no growth. I'm like, what's going on? What's the problem? It's like you're stagnant. And
Mhm.
he, oh, woe is me. Don't nobody care about me. My mama was the only one that loved me. Ain't nobody helping me. Whoa, what? I said, dude, I didn't even know you at all. I met you in my house. I gave you food. I bought you clothes. I helped you get your driver's license. I let you drive my wife's car and you totaled it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
It's like all the things. I'm like, what else do someone has to do?
Okay.
But in his mindset, because he was so accustomed to feeling like there was no hope, that he couldn't even recognize everything that we had already did. You know what
Wow.
I'm saying? And so sometimes that's just the mindset of some people. So it's like that's why I said they have to be ready. Because even when, like, I was having that conversation with him, if you're
Mhm.
having that conversation with somebody who's not ready to have it don't matter what you say. Oh no, you was doing that because this, or yeah, but like his response to me, yeah, but you the only one.
Okay,
I
but
said,
I'm the one.
you only need
But
one. Yeah,
sometimes it only
I
takes
said, you
one.
only need one. I'm like, how many people, I said, you only need one. I haven't seen him in a while. He did get himself together. He ended up moving to another state and everything. And I hope he's doing well. I haven't talked to him in years. Um, but
Well,
yeah, but that
I hope
was the
you
thing.
call him. Do you have a way of contacting him?
I have no information.
Mm.
Long story short, last time he called me, last time I was in contact with him, he called me to borrow some money and I haven't
That's
heard
what I was
back.
about to say. He called you to ask for money, didn't
He
he?
called and was like, hey, let me hold something until whenever. And yeah, I haven't heard from him since then. So
Okay,
that's why I hope he's doing well.
yeah.
But again, it's that mindset. Sometimes people get stuck in that victim mindset of, whatever their reality is. And
Mhm.
even when the reality changes, they're so used to being there that
Mhm.
they can't even recognize, like, dude, you was on the bench when I met you. I gave you a bed.
Mhm.
You was walking when I met you. I helped you get your driver's license and gave you my wife's car. You know what I mean? I helped you get your first job. I took you back to school so you can get your GED. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But sometimes they don't see it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And that's the pain that was showing up through his behavior, that we have to understand and give so much grace. And I appreciate,
Mhm.
hearing your story, because that's what I'm hearing is that you was extending him grace in a
Mhm.
painful period in his life, and trying to help him get past that pain is
Yeah.
is what I hear. Um, so let's transition a little bit here. So you've talked about your marriage eventually ended. You guys stayed friends, but I want to ask you a little bit about that time. Can you share with us some of the emotions that you felt during that time that surprised you? Or were there any emotions that surprised you?
So I will say this, and sometimes it's a surprise to ladies because it's like men have emotions too, right? And we
Really?
don't
No.
always show it, or we don't show it the same way that
Mm,
you show it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean we weren't affected by it,
yeah.
right? Um, Me myself, I even go back to my first marriage because before I got married, again, I was raised in a two-parent household. I seen my parents go through the ups and downs and all of that, and I'm like, that's what I want. When I got married the first time, and once I got to the fact that okay, we about to get divorced, I was devastated. I was
Mm,
devastated because I'm like, this was not my example. You know what I mean? This is not what I wanted. I wanted to try to stick it out, and I did for a while to the
Mm-hmm.
best that I could, but I was really disappointed, during that time period. And then I talked to, I mentioned at the beginning, dealing with different things, dealing with depression came out of that. When her mom died, my first wife, when her mom died, her mom was such a beautiful person, and I talk about her all the time. I really loved her, and we had our own relationship. Like we would go out together, me and her. We would go out to dinner, have lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Even the times when when it got to the part where she got sick and she stopped working, we only lived like maybe 10 minutes away. I would just go over and we'd spend the day together. Like we had our own relationship. So when
Mm-hmm.
she passed, it definitely took a toll on my ex-wife, but it took a toll on me as well.
as
You
Mm-hmm.
know
well.
what I mean? Because of our relationship. And so
Mm-hmm.
even in that marriage and going into my second marriage, it's just like there are things that, again, I came into it with that same hope, even more so for my second marriage, because it was like, I know you. You know what I'm saying? I know your mama. I know your
It should be
daddy. You know
easy.
what I'm saying? Yeah, like this, we should have this. We've been together, we've been
You
around each
got
other
this.
our whole life. We should
You
be
got
good.
this. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that it don't work that way. You know what I'm saying? As easily, there are still conversations that need to be had. There are still expectations that need to be expressed.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's a blessing to be able to have these conversations after the fact that we
Mm-hmm.
were able to talk to some things. But in the midst of it, I was hurt, because I expected my first marriage. I hoped that it worked. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? But the
Yeah.
second marriage, I expected it to work. I'm like, oh, everything lines up. We're already family, pretty much. Everything should be good. But everything is not always a fairy tale.
Right.
And so, but yeah, so definitely went through some sort of depression. A little, not as much as my doing coming out of my first marriage, but definitely some disappointment in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I did, which is how I realized that every woman I've ever dated was a fatherless daughter, because I sat down with myself and said, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you've been married twice. What did you do or didn't you do in the downfall of both of these marriages? And
Mhm.
so as I began to, hold myself accountable for the things that I did or
Mm-hmm.
didn't do in my marriages, and I started to look at, okay, them as individuals and then look at them together, that's how I realized, like, oh, both of them was fatherless daughters. Then I started looking at my dating history and I'm like, well, she didn't have no daddies, and she didn't have no, all of them ain't had no daddies. You know what I'm saying?
So you
So
out
it
here
was like,
just looking for fatherless women? Is that you? Were you trying to be their
no,
savior?
no, you know what? And that was a crazy part too,
Mm-hmm.
because I never even realized it until after my divorce. Now, mind
Until.
you, I'm already, shoot, by then, if I wasn't in my 30s, it was close to 40 around that time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 30 years. But I never even noticed
You
it
never
until
realize it.
then. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize it. And so, but I do say this, once I realized it and I started, kind of looking at my own history,
Mm-hmm.
there were some things that happened in my childhood that
Mm-hmm.
I feel that did kind of give me that complex of the savior complex. I would
Okay.
say that I had to address, like, even though I didn't know I was attracting fatherless daughters,
Mm-hmm.
once I kind of addressed it, it was like, yeah, this part of me, this broken part of me that I'm carrying
Mm-hmm.
is attracting that broken part of them. So even
Okay.
though we don't know why we're attracted to each other,
But that's what
we
it
see the
is.
fact, and even to today, I know it now. I still attract positive daughters.
That's I'm like, so moving forward,
I
would
still
you?
attract them.
So how does this work for you moving forward? Are you gonna change that or
No, I don't think it's anything that I need to change.
okay?
Because the emotion is still genuine, the
Mm-hmm.
love is still genuine. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that's just a part of it. And I still today don't know why I attract fatherless daughters. I don't know, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, because even like I said, I mentioned about the things that I do now.
Mm-hmm.
When I went through that phase and I was kind of thinking about that, what came to me was, okay, for whatever reason, either I'm attracted to them or they're attracted to me, but we keep
Mm-hmm.
attracting to each other. So
Mm-hmm.
what can I do? Again, having a heart that I have, what can I do to help this demographic of women that I keep coming in contact with? Right. So I
Ah,
started a page on Instagram called Friends to Fatherless Daughters.
Okay.
And I will go on and just give my advice and give different
Mm-hmm.
things, things. And I started really getting into, reading books and stuff on fatherless daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And that everything I do now started from that because I
Okay.
started doing that. Then one young lady called me one day and said, "Would you like to be on my podcast?" I had never even done a podcast. I said, "Okay, I'll
Mm-hmm.
do it." So I did that interview on her podcast. After I did that interview, I got called for like 7 more podcasts,
Okay.
to come on and talk about fatherless daughters. And the video is still up. You type in Earnest James on YouTube, a whole
Mm-hmm.
lot of fatherless daughter videos is gonna come up. But that is kind of how everything started, even with me starting my own podcast, because I was on a podcast with 2 young men. They both were fathers and they both were girl dads. So we was
Mm-hmm.
talking about, the fatherless daughters and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up meeting one of them in person, Josh. I met
Mm-hmm.
Josh in person. We sat down for lunch, after our conversation, he was like, "I think you need to have your own podcast," And I was like, "All right, I'll think about it." And
Mm-hmm.
I thought about it, decided to start the podcast. I had him as one of my first guests, and 240 something episodes later, but all of it started from that realization of I keep attracting fatherless daughters. How can I help them? You
mm,
Okay.
know,
yeah.
so yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, as a fatherless daughter, what I was looking for was safety and protection, covering, or whatever. So
Mhm.
I could see
Mm-hmm.
where if you bring those things to the table, that's definitely attractive
Yeah.
to any woman who has never had that. And then
Mhm.
that's the thing, because I just felt unprotected for a long time, and really until I came to faith in Jesus Christ, I was carrying all of this on my shoulders. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to be this. I have to be tough. I have to, keep all of the balls up in the air going.
Mhm.
And once I
Mm-hmm.
became a born again Christian and found out, what the Word of God says about how much He loves me, and how this world is his and he's in control, and he wants my good. He's for all of our good, right? Then I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of just relax and like,
Mhm.
okay, God got me. I don't have to do all this.
Mhm. Yeah. So
And
I wrote an
it was
ebook.
such a freeing feeling.
Yeah, I wrote an ebook called The Core Four, right? Which is the core four values that every daughter should get from her father. So it's um, guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection, right?
Mm.
And so all of those four things, and I'll go over them really briefly. So guidance is I always say learning or teaching our daughters, right, how to make decisions based on facts and not feelings. Because a lot of times they make decisions dealing with, this is how I feel, or this what makes me feel this way, or whatever. Like, okay, but what are the facts of the situation, right?
Mhm.
And so guiding them, giving that guidance on how to make good decisions. Prime example with my daughter came to me and said, "Dad, I want to buy a car," and so she like, "I got, this much money for my down payment and all of that stuff." And I said, "Well, why don't we work on your credit so that you can walk in there, sign your name, and keep your money in your pocket?"
Mhm.
So those are the things that how to guiding our daughters to make great decisions and sound decisions based on facts and not
Mhm.
on emotion.
On
So that's
emotion.
guidance. Affirmations. I always say affirmations is telling you what you should know, but you might need to hear it from me. So make sure we tell our daughters, you are beautiful, you are smart, you are intelligent, you can do whatever you want to do. Like really just building her up and affirming her. She needs those things. Love and affection, you are going to be the first example of what that looks like in your daughter's life. So you're going to be the first example of a man that shows up for her. You're going to be the first one to show up and how you talk to her and how you,
Mhm.
present yourself. And even with my daughter, I was very conscious of not only how I spoke to her, but how I spoke to her mom and her stepmom. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, no, because I want you to see how you're supposed to be communicated to.
Mhm.
I don't curse. You've never heard me. You ain't never even heard us argue, even with your mom. And we don't even get along. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? But you haven't heard us argue. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm careful about how I present what I want you to get used to in a
Mhm.
man, having a conversation with you. Right. And so, that plays its part. And then did I do all four? Protection. I would say protection. Usually, we as men we think we know that one because it was like, all right, physical protection. Ain't nobody gonna touch my baby, and I'm gonna do this and whatever. And I do. There is a part for that. But one of the words I kind of switched that word out from protection to safety, and it's showing your daughter what it means to be safe and allowing her to feel safe, safe to be heard, safe to be who she wants to be, safe,
Mhm.
safe to show up in the world how she feels
Mhm.
she needs to.
Mhm.
Because again, my daughter's 23 now. Like you're going to go out into this world. There are some places that you may work that your boss might try to make you feel some type of way. There's some
Mhm.
places that you may go, they may not appreciate you. All of those things. I have to make sure that I build in that protection of safety to let you know you can do whatever you want to do and you can show up as your true authentic self in every space.
Mhm.
And then even with that, what I always tell people, once we put these things into our daughters, they never stop needing it. It just changes from where they get it from,
Yeah.
right? So when you're a
Mm.
daughter and you grow up and you get married, you still need those four things. You're just looking for it to get it from your husband now. You're looking
Mm,
for him to give you guidance. You're looking for him to affirm you. You're looking for him
Right.
to love, to show you love and affection. You're
mm,
looking for him to protect you. You still want it from your father too, but
mhm.
now
But
as
it's
a married
transferred.
woman, you're looking for it from him as well.
But
And
see,
so,
now they know what that looks like.
mhm,
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
they make better decisions because you have provided that safety, all of the four things, the guidance, the affirmation, the love and affection, they have guided that. And I have seen that, things that my husband did with my daughter. We have one daughter, he's like, I'm gonna be the first one to buy her a set of her diamond earrings, which he did. He was the first one that gave her roses.
Mhm.
He was the first one that bought her cars, her little black dress. So all these things, and I didn't get it first because my dad never did. My dad was around, but I was pretty much in a single parent household too. So we didn't. I didn't even know what I needed when I got married. Like you said, you
Mhm.
did, Lucille. I had no idea what I needed, or
yeah. And that was a conversation too. So when I started doing the friends of fatherless daughters, I started doing like little coaching sessions too. And one of the things that I would always run into with some of the fatherless daughters, they were like, I'm good. Like, yeah, my daddy wasn't in my life, but I'm good, this and that. I'm like, how do you know? You have no reference point. You know what
Mm,
I'm saying?
exactly, that's what
You
you
don't
know.
even know what you're missing. So how
yeah.
can you say you're good and you have no reference?
Mhm.
And so again, that a lot of the conversations they got to be ready to have because they were like, "What do you mean?" What I mean? I'm like, just because you feel you're good, you don't even realize the way you're showing up in the world. A
Hmm.
lot of times is based off your father wound that you don't even know that you have,
That you
right?
have. Yeah.
So, prime example, you have people that let's talk about the self-sabotage, right? You get into a relationship, but you're used to being hurt, you're used to being left. So yeah, and this has happened to me. You get into a relationship and it's good, like everything is good. And it's like, yeah, it's too good. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so you start doing things to sabotage the relationship. And then when they leave, then it's like, oh, I knew he was gonna leave. Like, no, you made me leave. Like
Right.
you literally start doing things that you knew would run me away.
And then say, I knew he was
But
gonna leave anyway.
Yeah, but they don't even recognize that that's a father wound. That's an abandonment wound. You
Mm,
know, so it's when you say, "Oh, I'm good," do you? How do you know? Because you
right.
don't even know what you're supposed to receive. You
Mm.
know
Right.
what I mean? So,
Well, you know
Mhm.
what? You bring up a valid point that I didn't have a father in the home. Like I say, they got divorced between second and third grade. But I knew from the time that I did spend with my dad what I felt like it should look like, or even that
mhm,
my cousins and everything, because I was
mhm,
around married people.
Mhm.
So, and my husband, the only female in their house was his mom. And so I'm not sure how his dad showed up for his mom at that point or whatever. But I'm going to tell you what I did for my daughter is I didn't wait for my husband to have that emotional maturity that you had or that thoughtfulness. Um, when she went off to college, I would tell my husband, "Hey, it's Valentine's Day. Do you want me to order some our daughter's name is Lydia. Do you want me to order some flowers for Lydia and they'll be from you for Valentine's Day?" He said, "Yeah, go ahead and order those." And so she knows what a man is supposed to do because her father did it. Now, did he have the thought? No, he didn't. But he was definitely open to it because I suggested it.
Mhm.
And it was several other things like that, and they bring that up. I used to send you flowers for Valentine's Day. Now, when I say you didn't do it, I did it. No, we're a team. And the
yeah,
thought is not that I am trying to run anything. I just wanted the best experience for
Mhm.
them to have. And I
yeah,
Mhm.
wanted him to be able to show up in a good way for his daughter. And I wanted
Mhm.
her to experience him showing up in a good way. So I facilitated that. So any of y'all who are listening, ladies, maybe your husband don't even think about it. You can help facilitate that.
Mhm.
There was an opportunity where there was an older man at our church. Now I'm telling you this, she'd only been back from college, a few years, so she was in her 20s. This man had to be at least 45. And he gave my daughter a card. And he said, "I'd like to take you out to dinner sometime." Baby, she came in and told her daddy, "Daddy, this man gave me a card." He said, "I'll be at church next Sunday. Show me him." And when he was at church, he didn't always go because he worked on Sunday sometime or whatever. He'd have to go to the forum. He was at church the next Sunday. That communicated a lot to her that my daddy is willing to show up. And
Mhm.
he did. He had that card in his pocket, and he'd say, "Man, let me talk to you for a minute." And he just slid that card out of his pocket and he's like, "Oh, man, I didn't mean nothing by that. I got daughters." See, a man know when another
mhm,
man that, yeah, you meant something by this. How did you talk
Mhm.
about taking a 22-year-old
Mhm.
out to dinner? You meant something,
yeah.
and I
Mhm.
know as a
And
man
you,
you meant something,
and
Mhm.
you
and
said
we
you
not
got
having
daughters, and she probably the same age as your daughter. Like, why are you even looking over him?
exactly.
Right. Right.
Well, I want to say something too, because I think this is important, because you mentioned about um, even suggesting the things that your husband can do even when he didn't think about it, right? So I talk about fatherless daughters, but I'm also a male mentor too, right? And so even with our boys, there sometimes is a vacancy because of the experience of the father not being in the home. So it affects our daughters. And even when I talk
Yeah.
about the core four, right? The
Mhm.
name of it is the core for the four things that our daughters need, but our sons need it too.
Yes.
Those same things our sons need, right? But I talk about it because there was a situation where a young man was like, whenever his father was killed when he was young, when he was younger, and
Mhm.
so he grew up saying, whenever I have kids, I'm going to show up for my kids. I'm going to be in the life of my kids. Well, he grew up and he had kids and he was absent,
Mhm.
right? And the way that I explain it is our minds is like a computer. It can do anything, but it can only run off the information that it has.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So even though he was saying he wanted to show up as a father, he wanted to be a good father and all of those things, he never had any reference point
He
and
didn't have
any
a frame of
information to
reference.
show up to be that. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I always say this: if that's what you want and you want to show up differently, you have to get the information. You have to go where the father's at, where the books on being a better father, where
Mm.
are the mentors
Mm-hmm.
that can show you how to be a better father,
Right.
to show you how to be the father that you didn't have. Like we
Right.
have to be as men, sometimes we have to show up in that way as well. Like if you grew up without your father, if you grew up without your mother, but you want to be a good father, you want to be a good mother, but you didn't personally have that experience, then
Mm-hmm.
you got to go get the information. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? You got to go find the mentors, find those people in your life that says, okay, I want to be that kind of mother. I want to show up for my daughter this way. I want to show up for my son this way. And we have to go and be intentional about getting that information for ourselves so
Mm-hmm.
that we can show up differently. Because if we don't, in his case, I believe that we run off the information that we have. So we just run off autopilot. So
Mm-hmm.
in his heart, I'm sure he definitely wanted to be a great father and show up and be everything that his father couldn't be because his father was taken from him. But because he never looked for that information, he just
Mm-hmm.
ran off autopilot. Like, okay, what does it mean to be a father? You have no reference. So all you
Mm.
can go reference, well, what did my dad do? Well, my dad didn't show up. My dad
Mm.
wasn't here. My dad wasn't around. So what
Yeah.
do I do? I got kids. I know where they at.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But are you showing up for the birthdays? No. Are you showing up for the graduations and all of those things? No, you're not. Because again, in your heart, I would love to say in your heart, you want to show up that way, but
Mm-hmm.
you never got the information, you never seen the example, and you never looked for what that meant for you to get the information to become the father that you wanted to become. So I think that plays a part too. Like if we didn't have the example, that doesn't give us a excuse not to go get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I
Right.
love that you said we can.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whatever we chose in our profession, we don't come out of the womb knowing how to do that. We've got
Mhm.
to, do some studying and get some guidance in that area, and that could be from books. Now we got podcasts, we got YouTube, we got all of these things
A
that
lot of information.
is
Mm-hmm.
available to us and everything. And so I'm gonna transition a little bit. Pat, this is so impactful about this healing thing. And Pat's conversation reminds us that emotional wellness doesn't just impact us; it impacts every relationship around us. And so, Pat, what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I know, and I know that emotional wellness shapes how we communicate, how we handle conflict, and how we respond when we feel hurt, disappointed, or afraid. I mean, we can carry unhealed pain. It often shows up in our marriages, in our parenting, and
Mhm.
even the way we see ourselves. Like you were saying, Ernest, we have to focus on that healing aspect and be supported in our relationships. You know, but like you said, also, you know, when we take responsibility for our own healing, we create space for a healthier conversation, stronger boundaries, more compassion,
Yeah.
and more peace within the family. To me, emotional wellness is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about becoming aware what we are carrying, getting the support we need and making the daily choice not to let our pain lead the relationship, because like we just had talked about, the pain can lead the relationship and we're following behind trying to figure it out. We just have to have those conversations.
And we talked about we've been talking about family this whole time, right? Family and kids and loved ones. So I did my first TEDx talk I think 2 years ago, and I shared this story about the a turning point in my life was an experience that I had with my daughter. And so years ago, my daughter probably was like, shoot, 6 or 7, 7 or 8, right around that time, right around 7. Um, During this time is when, me and her mom was talking about divorce. The economy was doing what it was doing. Money started getting tight, all of those things. Then my wife at the time, her mom passed. Right,
Mm.
her mom passed away, and then not long after that, it probably was like 3 years after that, my mom passed away. And so during that time period, I'm in a bad space, right? And I see I was living a D life. I was in debt. I was depressed. I was going through a divorce, and then I had to deal with the death of two women that I love dearly,
The
right?
D
So I'm
life.
dealing with yeah. So I'm living all of that at the same time. So that also started my well, I was already depressed, but that started my suicidal ideations and
Mm,
me really thinking about, you know what, I can't change these things that I'm going through, but I'm the common denominator of all of it. So if I remove myself, maybe everything can get better for everybody else. Um, so I'm at the house this one day. Now I'm having these thoughts. I'm not sharing this with nobody, but this is all things that I'm dealing with during this time. And so I'm at the house. My wife was gone wherever she was at. I don't remember, but it was just me and my daughter was there. And so this day I put out the kiddie pool, I put the sprinklers on, all of that, and she got on her little bathing suit and she's running and she's playing in the water. I'm sitting on the porch and I'm watching her. And she's just running around playing and having a good little time. Then she stops and she runs over to me on the porch. So when she reaches me on the porch, she's crying. Like, why are you crying? Like nothing happened. Like I'm sitting there watching. You didn't fall or nothing. Like nothing happened. She just ran over to me and she started crying. I said, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" And she said, "I miss my grandmothers."
mhm,
And that really hit me because with everything that I was going through and really, really thinking about possibly ending my own life, my daughter's my only biological child, and she's a daddy's girl. So
mm,
I'm like, if she's missing her grandmothers, number one, first of all, she even recognized at 7 that she's
mhm,
missing them. She
mhm,
have the words to say to me, I'm missing them, and
mhm,
she's crying. So she's already dealing with grief at her young age, and she's able to express it.
mhm,
And she's a daddy's girl. So if she's feeling that way about them, how is she gonna feel if something happened to me? How she's gonna feel if I'm not here? And so that was a turning point, in everything that I was dealing with. I still was dealing with it,
mhm,
but
mhm.
it changed my mindset that it took, it took me off, or should I say, it took taking myself out off the table. Like, yeah, I
Right,
can't.
right.
That's not even a
You could
thing.
not.
Yeah,
You definitely couldn't put that on her.
yeah. And so I that was kind of the turning point, and
Mhm,
I, started doing the work over the years and all of that to be able to get on the other side of it. And now I'm very vocal about it. I talk to
mhm,
people all the time about it because, especially men, because I want them to be able to free them up to be able to have the conversation as well.
mhm,
And when I did my TEDx talk, my daughter was actually there to hear the story. And I don't know if I even told her the story before that, but she was
mhm,
able to be there in the room to hear me share that as my TEDx talk, to share that experience. Because I'm sure she don't remember that day because she was only like 7. She's 23 now. I know she don't remember it,
mhm,
but it just goes back. But to when we talk about mental health, and this is something that I talk about too as a resilience strategist and a grief guide, is when we are grieving a loss, don't forget about our kids. Because a lot of times we think, oh, they young, they don't understand, they just playing, they don't even know that somebody done died. Like, no, my daughter literally said to me, I miss my grandmothers, both of them. You know
Yeah.
what I
mhm,
mean?
mhm,
So at her young age, she experienced grief and she was dealing with grief and was able to say, I'm missing it. And I was just recently on a podcast with on a different podcast, and there was a female host that was there, and she was giving her example or her experience with one of her daughters, where her daughter who lives with her, she had an older daughter that she had, I guess, when she was younger, and she had gave her up for adoption. And they
mhm,
had been in contact, with the older daughter until the parents who adopted her decided they didn't want her to have any contact with
mhm,
the mother. So she
Mm.
said that daughter probably was gone for like 2 years.
mhm,
And one night, her baby daughter, who was like 5, wakes up and she's just screaming. And she ran to her, as a mom, like, what's going on? What's wrong? And she said, I miss my sister. She hadn't seen
Oh.
her sister in 2 years,
Mm.
Mm.
and she was like, it was just out of the blue. And so I'm like, with her and with myself, the blessing that we had was our kids had the words. Our
Mm.
children had the words to be able to say, I miss this person,
Yeah.
but all the time our kids don't have the words to say. We as adults, a lot of times don't have the words to express what we're
Yeah.
dealing with
Absolutely.
and the that we have.
Absolutely.
So
Mm.
I just like to tell people, when you're dealing with something, especially if it's a loss that affects your whole family,
Hmm.
please make sure you don't forget about your kids
Children.
because they feel it too.
Oh man, that is so wonderful. Healing creates healthier relationships, and that's for everybody involved. Well,
Mhm.
Ernest, this conversation has been both honest and hopeful. Before we close, I'd like to ask just one final question. What is the biggest takeaway that you want to leave with our listeners today?
Um, my biggest takeaway that I think has been a theme through all of this is the communication, right? We have to be willing to be honest. We got to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to have the conversations that sometimes can be a hard conversation, whether we're talking about divorce, whether we're talking about grief, whether we're talking about death, whatever the conversation that needs to be had, we have to have the conversations. And again, I talk about being, very vocal about my experience, dealing with suicidal ideations. I'm a bricklayer by trade, right? And so in the construction industry, once I really start, getting into the grief and being a grief guide, I found out that the construction industry is within the top 10 industries of suicide.
Mm.
Wow.
And so I understand why, because it's a male dominated field.
Hmm.
And even on the job now, like, we never want to show weakness to one another, and so we don't want to have those conversations. But I
Hmm.
remember this was just last year. I remember being on the job, and as a bricklayer, we have laborers that work with us, and usually we work in a group. Usually it's about 10 or more of us. But this particular day, it's just me and one laborer, just the two of us working together. We had a small project that we were working on, and I had worked around him, but I had never worked directly with him.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So this particular day, it was just the two of us, and we're doing this little project. And so he said, "Well, Ernest, what did you do last weekend? Like, what did you do for the weekend?" And so I had a speaking engagement that past weekend. So I'm like, "Yeah, I had a speaking engagement, and I had to speak, and I got a podcast, and I talk about depression and divorce and suicide ideations." So when I said suicide ideations, he was like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." So told him the whole story about me and my daughter and that experience and all of that.
Hmm.
And so when I shared that with him, he started talking. And
Hmm.
he said his family as a whole has always dealt with suicidal ideations. He has dealt with it. His father dealt with it. Other members in his family dealt with it. But it was really bad to the fact that his father actually completed suicide. And he
Hmm.
was the one who found his father's body.
Oh.
So having that conversation with him by me being vulnerable was able to open up the door for
For
him
him.
to share that. And
Hmm.
so we had a break. So we ended up going to lunch like 30 minutes or whatever. When we came back, he said, "Ernest, you're a cool guy to talk to because what I just told you, I've never told anybody." And so
Mm.
my question has always been, how long have you been carrying that? Like, how long have you had this thing on your heart, not only dealing with your father completing suicide, but you yourself having suicidal ideations? And if
Mm.
I had never opened up, how much
Hmm.
longer would you have carried that?
Mm.
Right.
And what effects on your mental health, or should I say on his mental health, would have had? So
Yeah.
Right.
we have to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to have the conversations. We have to be willing to ask the questions. We have to be willing to tell whatever our expectations are.
Hmm.
We got to be willing to communicate. And so I think that is the thread that goes through all of this whole conversation. Wherever we're, whether we're talking about families, love, happiness, jobs, whatever, we
Hmm.
have to be able to communicate, our desires, even to ourselves. Again,
Hmm.
going back to what makes you happy.
Right.
You got to know. If you
Right.
don't know, how do I know?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
So tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
You can find me at my website, Ernest James Speaks Life. You can also find me at dealhealfulfill.org. That is my organization. If you want to find me quickly, if you go to YouTube and you type in Ernest James, EARNESCJAMES, you will find me because there's definitely over 300 videos on. So you type in my name, I'm definitely gonna come
You
up.
gonna come up.
But yeah, so Ernest James speaker on IG, Ernest James just by itself on Facebook. But yeah, if you just type my name in Google, I'm gonna come up. I
Okay.
know because I've done it. Yeah, yeah. And I'll say this: I had a meeting the other day. I'm a part of a speakers community, Next Level Speakers Academy, and I'm the vice president of the Chicago chapter. And we had a meeting. Actually, it was yesterday. We had a meeting yesterday, and the secretary was like, I was looking up videos to show, why everybody was coming in because we were doing a Zoom meeting. She was like, I was looking up videos to show, and I typed in motivation, and you came up. I was like, what? I'm doing it like that. So if you want to find me, if you Google Ernest James, yeah, I'll come up.
Oh, I love that. And James, I'm part of Next Level Speakers too, in case you didn't know that. And that's how I
Oh
ended
yes.
up connecting with you. Yes.
Okay.
So
Great, great, great. Did you go to the conference this year?
I didn't get a chance to go. I had bought my ticket on the early bird specials.
Hmm.
I had an executive level experience that I was expected
Oh man.
to take advantage of, and I'm part of a documentary, so I
Hmm.
ended up having to go to Florida that weekend. But I uh, gave my ticket and sold part of my ticket to
Yeah.
a wonderful young man that my daughter knew, and so he went and was able to really just soak up all the knowledge. He had a
Mhm.
fantastic time. So I said,
Cool.
okay, Lord, maybe that
Mhm.
was what the Lord had up his sleeve for it and everything. Because I'm not sure if he would have purchased the executive package,
Mhm.
if he'd have
Yeah.
been purchasing it for himself. But he
Yeah.
was happy. He probably ain't gonna be
Yeah.
able to do it no other way now because he was right up there in front
Right. Right. Yeah.
with the
He-
officers and execs
yeah.
from the different organizations,
Yep.
different chapters and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I may have ruined him, but in a good way.
Well, it's definitely good community, good organization, and I hopefully he stays in it and stays with it. Definitely good people to know.
Absolutely. And see, Jeremy came to our chapter because, of course, Dallas got 3 years in a row. Chapter of the year. And he was there to meet Jeremy there in person
Nice,
at our
nice.
meetup and everything. So it was really good. So let me just say this is been a very good heartfelt conversation. I have taken so many notes
Mhm.
here and
Mhm.
everything. And so what I would like to leave everybody with is we leave them with a heart to heart challenge. And so whether you're married, separated, divorced, or healing from a difficult relationship, ask yourself this: what pain have I been avoiding that is preventing me from becoming the healthiest version of myself? What pain have I been avoiding that is preventing me from becoming the healthiest version of myself? And then choose one trusted person that could be a spouse, a family member, counselor, mentor, or friend, and begin one honest conversation this week about that, because healing begins when silence ends. That's what we've been talking about this whole time is
Communication.
don't don't communication. Don't have those thoughts that you have, just in your head. Voice them. Try to get the words to be able to voice those conversations. So, Ernest, thank you so much. Is there any way that we can pray for you this week?
Oh, I take all the prayers. I take all the prayers. Definitely pray for my mental health. Pray for my business and my desires to be that sanctuary for people, and that God would just continue to bless me in that area, where I can be a blessing to his people.
Oh, I love that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So thank you for reminding us that while marriages sometimes end, love, healing, and forgiveness and family don't have to. Your story reminds us that healing isn't simply about moving on, it's about becoming whole so we can love others better, lead our families well, and fulfill the purpose God has placed on our lives. Thank you for sharing your heart with us today, and thank you, everyone, for listening to the Stronger, Deeper Marriage Show. If today's conversation encouraged you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs hope. Remember, every family has a story, and one courageous conversation has the power to change how the next chapter is written. Until next time, building marriages filled with peace. Keep building marriages filled with peace, purpose, and passion. Bye bye.
Bye.